Get ready for Real Talk Radio. You're listening to the National Intel Report with your host, John Stachmiller.
All right, folks, we are back. Response to, actually, is a pastor down here in Texas, Ken. Any response, gentlemen?
Yeah, as I said, I mean, I'm still amazed why people put their little mush heads in public education institutions. I mean, all they do is give them psychotropic drugs and teach them political correctness. I mean, if you love your kid, surely you wouldn't want to expose them to that kind of danger. So it still amazes me why people do that.
That's why I don't put my kids in public school.
Yeah, I mean, exactly.
Well, and
what is their excuse for this exercise?
The only excuse I got from the teacher that I had talked to, because she pretty much said I needed to talk to school administrators in Austin. This was their plan, not the teachers or the local school system. But she said that was what they were trained to do, to have the students do. And I just looked at the teacher and I said, do you have a student that's readily available? And she says, yes. And I said, have them set up for the tornado drill. And she had them, and I put my hands, just like I would have done when I was in the Army, I put one of my hands on both their hands, and I took my finger in the position of a gun. I put it to the back of the head, and I looked at her, and I said, now, what's this remind you of? And the woman was completely horrified by this, but she understood what was going on. She understood what the point I was making, which, thank goodness I did enlighten one person on this, is that we're putting these children, we're training these children that when that particular sound goes off, they are to go out in the hallway like good little prisoners of war and get in that position and prepare. I mean, I find it very devastating for people that actually put their children in public school and let their children go through this. I mean, there's no reason for that.
Yeah, and it's all fine and dandy that we pull our children out and we homeschool them, but that is a small percentage of the children that are going through this government re-education program that we call the public school system. That is not a solution for, either myself or you, Ken, or Joe Blow in Kokomo, to pull their child out of the school. That's okay for the family, that's good for the child, but that changes nothing in the landscape of the propaganda and the propagandists through the public school system. This has got to stop. People have got to start challenging. What does, in Poole, Texas, what does the independent school district headquartered out of Austin have to do with that? If I was the principal of that school, I would have said, you know what? This isn't a disaster drill.
It's not.
It isn't. I would have stood up as a principal and I said, this is a propagandizing instrument that you're doing with my students, and I'm not going to allow it.
That's correct.
People have got to start standing up. All right, Ken, I appreciate your call. Thank you for that.
No problem. Thank you.
All right. Out in a mall in California, they were doing live shooter drills. Well, not with the public, of course, but the mock situation. They were actually in a mall, a retail mall, 6 a.m. in the morning, replete with people that had artificial hands and legs that bled on the mall floor. Officers were shot, and this was all part of a shooter drill of what to do with a shooter when they're in an area with live people. And again, this is part of a conditioning program to get people used to this. By the way, Bob, did you catch the pictures of the military police at the horse race in Kentucky this past weekend?
Yes, I did, and I have it in tomorrow's issue in a link. And those guys are carrying 9mm.
Yes, they were.
Now, pray tell, I've been to the racetrack maybe 5,000 times. I've never seen anybody with a sidearm. And, of course, they have them when they come to pick up the payroll or the receipts and so on. Private guard companies come in and do that. And of course, they have security at racetracks without saying. but they don't run around in fatigues with 9 millimeters on them. Why and I just can't understand what reason they would have to be armed at the Kentucky Derby.
Well, and at the Kentucky Derby, I mean, over the years they've had their security problems, drunk people stumbling out on the racetrack, an angry person. But what was really shocking about this is the military police didn't show up, and as you said, fully camouflaged. They were in uniform with sidearms, but you didn't see them until the occasion arose, and then there they were. They appeared like Casper the Ghost. And part of this is conditioning. I remember 5 years ago going to a Dallas Cowboys game when they were playing the Lions, walking up and seeing some clown dressed up in his black BDUs with his Cole Scuttle helmet on with an MP5. I walked directly up to the guy and said, "What in God's name are you doing here?" He looked at me and says, "I don't know. This is just for show. They tell me what to do." 5 years ago. Just to condition the people that the government is there to keep you safe.
Well, they're doing this in a lot of countries, and they're doing it in Mexico. Of course, the war with the drug lords is going on, and that's because the CIA wants to take over the drug operations, and the people who are in office in Mexico City aren't getting enough payoffs from the drug people. That's really what that's all about. But as an excuse for that, and now this so-called swine flu epidemic, they have many cities, they have hundreds, if not thousands, of troops going up and down the streets, M60s, mounted on the vehicles, and everybody with their either the G3, FNFAL, or M16. And believe me, when I visited there, I saw the condition of those weapons, and there's no way I would even fire one.
You know, I mean, this is so blatant. It is in your face, but mysteriously, it's not existent, Bob, because it's not being discussed by the mainstream media. Only the alternative media, and of course, we're the bad guys. Let me give you an example of something here. You know, according to Op-Ed News, while the world's power elite, known as the Bilderbergers, they're preparing, by the way, to meet for their annual push for world governance. That comes up in a couple of days, the 14th through the 19th. The corporate media propagandists provide their cover by flooding the airwaves with swine flu fears, their recovering or teetering stock market, torture, and other items that have been contrived by those same elitists in order to cover their true intentions. One participant, one Alice Rivlin, who represents the Brookings Institute, at Bilderberg, simply smiled and nodded when asked if the agenda this year includes a world without borders and an American Union. All she did was politely smile and walk on. I mean, guys.
It's a secret organization which is its total goal is world government, and in order to achieve that, they must overthrow every sovereign government in the world. And I wish people would get it into their thick heads out there that these people are murderers, killers. For thousands of years they've been doing this. And they're going to continue if you don't do something about it.
You know, and just to give you an example how people are propagandized, Gary Franchi sent me the latest Republic magazine. And in this was an example of how people are propagandized. And by the way, Bob, this SIFTED agreement, the one through the United Nations about reloading, you know, it's bomb making, it's weapons of mass destruction, so on and so forth. I mean, just to give you an idea, here's the real story on kids' deaths, okay? A motor vehicle, ages 0 through 14, 2,591. Drownings, 943. Fires and flame, 593. Mechanical suffocation, 601. Ingestion of food or objects, I guess that entails choking, 169. And out of this figure, for a year's time, firearms deaths were 86. They've hyped this deal that these Mexican drug lords, oh, well, gosh, they're killing police and military down there with weapons supplied by the U.S. They're quoting 90%, Bob, when in actuality, less than 17% of those weapons that are ending up in the drug lords' hands to kill their competition off, as well as their own government forces, 17%. This is a little bit more than just, keeping peace with Mexico. I mean, this drug war, this has been the excuse for how many years to subjugate just about everybody on this planet, and especially here inside the United States.